Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Code. Today I'm reviewing Battleforge Berserker from Creative Game Studios. Battleforge Berserker is the newest game from Creative Game Studios. This is going to be a solo or cooperative boss battler experience in which players are going to be working together to try to take down the big bad, in this case Thor, but whichever various boss you're fighting off against, while utilizing a rondel or more of a Mancala style mechanism to take actions as you drop cubes off around the board. This is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. The basics I've kind of given you already. You're going to be playing through scenarios. Over here in this prototype, I do have 3 scenarios, but I would have to flip over a bunch of tokens. I'll show you at the end. I'll flip over some stuff. But there's tokens and stuff on the board, so I don't want to flip the pages quite yet. But there's 3 scenarios over here. You'll then also choose your heroes as well as the boss you're fighting off against. Keep in mind, in this being the prototype, I only have the 1 boss to fight against, Thor, as well as the 1 set of minions, and then the 3 scenarios, and then 3 heroes and 3 monster forms. So a limited amount of content, but I check out the campaign to see what there is. I don't frankly know what is in the full game. But with that said, the general idea of what you're trying to do is you're going to pick a scenario. The scenario will give you the specific goal. So for example, in this goal you are trying to defeat Thor, but you need to keep at least one of these alive at the end of the game. Basically, the minions are going to be trying to extinguish these flames, and you have to have at least 1 left alive, as well as having defeated Thor, and also doing so before you've used up your 2 hero deaths. So you're allowed to die once. You're not allowed to die much more than that's in this game. As far as what you're doing, or the general turn structure, is heroes are going to take their turns, and then the enemies are going to take their turns. Back and forth, you're going to take turns, then enemy, your turns, enemy, until eventually either you win or you die. Lose, die, one of those 2 things. As far as what a turn looks like, you're going to take your hero. Over here I'm set up for 1 hero. You're going to have your hero form over here, as well as having your monster form, which you will hopefully be unlocking throughout the course of the game. But you're going to utilize this Mancala style mechanism to take 3 actions. The actions you can take are generally going to be moving around the board, attacking, healing, rearranging your cubes. There's things you can do, but mostly you're going to be focusing on moving and attacking as the main 2 things, along with a degree of rituals to power yourself up, and then also healing yourself to try to make sure you don't have that dying aspect going on for you. What an action looks like in the game is you're going to look where you have a bunch of cubes. So for example, over here, let's pretend I did want to take a, let's see, I'm going to take a rearrange action. So I'm going to start off by taking a rearrange action, moving 2 cubes around the board. So I'm going to move these ones over here, and that'll give me some setup over here for a stronger attack action. Then from there, if I were to take an attack action from here, I would simply take a level 3 attack action, moving 1, 2, 3 around the board, because that's an attack action. But I'm also setting up my cubes in different ways to power up my other actions. You are constantly being mindful as far as which actions you take and how those are going to set yourself up for future actions. That's before we even get into things like reactions, which are free, but utilizing the spots where your cubes are. So you can, for example, take reactions to re-roll dice, for example, for over there, or to defend yourself from these shields. So those spots are not just going to be taking actions for you, but also setting yourself up in order to react accordingly to either a bad roll or alternatively an enemy hitting you. But ultimately, you're taking 3 core actions on this rondel while you ultimately try to take down Thor. As far as what that looks like, when you're facing off against a regular minion, let's pretend there was a minion in my space over here. If I'm facing off against a general minion, I would then look at the minion's attributes on their card. I'd be rolling dice. So for example, going back to the 3 strength attack action over here I took, I'd be rolling 3 dice, but I also have an upgrade over here, so I'm going to roll a green dice along with my dice over here. I'll roll those. I got 3 hits, which is enough to kill this minion offhand. But if I were a little shy, I could, for example, because again I would have gone 1, 2, 3, I could then spend some of my cubes over here to take a 2 reroll action, re-rolling these over here to try to get what I need, and look at that, I got 4 hits, and I'm able to take down the minion. That's the general attack action you're doing. When you kill the minion, you're going to get points that you can use to power up your character and start unlocking various attributes along their side until eventually you get all the way to the top, at which point you'll unlock your monster form. Once you unlock your monster form, you'll take that monster form, you'll clip it to your hero, and now you have a hero in a full-on monster little mini over here, and you're going to be combining the 2 of them to have your both your hero as well as your monster form. Now you're doing all this to ultimately take down Thor. Again, this is a scenario by scenario what you're trying to do, but right now I'm trying to kill Thor, and that's where Thor's faces are going to come into play. The bosses have different faces around their base, and depending on how you're positioned, you're going to be facing off against those faces. You're going to look at the various abilities of those faces, and they all have different things that will make them either easier or harder. The front-facing faces are harder. They represent a different difficult challenge for taking the boss on head on. Alternatively, if you strike from the back, you do get certain benefits on the rear sides, but you also have to be mindful because every face you destroy is going to power up Thor's defense, giving him 1 additional defense, which means when you're hitting that 6th face, he has 5 built-in defense to anything you do, and you need to do 2 damage per hero. So in a 2-hero game, for example, you need to do 4 damage to the base, which means you need to roll a 9 or slowly stack up damage. But again, slowly stacking up damage means he's going to have that 5 defense on every single hit, which means he is going to become very, very hard to kill as he gets closer and closer to defeat. The good news is you will slowly be powering up your various dice over here. You'll be adding more cubes to your rondel. There's ways of earning temporary cubes or even frostbitten cubes that will damage you but give you extra strength. And you're utilizing all those abilities, the abilities on your hero, the abilities on your monster, the various cubes you've built up in order to work together to ultimately take down Thor. That's the basic idea of, well, I guess your hero phase. When the monsters take their turn, the monsters are going to reveal an event card. An event card is going to have something happen. Generally, it's going to involve bad things for the heroes, but sometimes there could be either side effects that are good or straight up good effects. And then from there, you'll reveal a Thor card, which will reveal which of the monsters move. So for example, in this case, the 1 and 2 monsters will move, but the level 3s will not. They're going to activate trying to approach either the heroes or their objective. I mentioned over here that some of these creatures are going to be trying to attack some of these, extinguishing them, so they're moving towards those, and the other enemies are moving towards the various heroes in play. And then after that, the boss is going to have their own way they act, and they kind of break all the rules. They'll be jumping around the board, throwing miniatures into well, you, frankly, trying to destroy you as much as possible, all while being very hard to get to and constantly repositioning themselves as defensively as possible. That's the general idea of this game. It's a rondel style game, which you're going to be taking 3 actions using your Mancala mechanisms, all while you try to power up, unlock abilities, unlock more cubes, get progressively stronger, hoping to power up better and faster than the boss does, while dealing with the specific nuances and the specific board of the individual scenario. I mentioned I'd show you some of the other stuff over here, so let's go ahead and clear some of these off before we dive into our review. Do I want to fully clear this? I'll fully clear. I'll fully clear everything off of here to show you some additional boards, just so you can get a general sense of the differentialness in the maps. So over here, when we flip these over, you can see that we have board number 2 over here, and then we also have board number 3, so that's going to be your second map, and then we have our third map over here. So small differences, giving you different little nuanced scenario goals that will mix things up as well. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into my review of what I like, don't like, can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which in general, this game is pretty fast-paced as far as what you're doing, the feel of what you're doing. You feel powerful as you play this game, and that's even when you start. When you start the game to begin with, you feel powerful. You can do all these cool actions on your rondel. 3 actions might not sound like a lot, but you can often get a lot done, especially when combining with your abilities. You're going to start with these abilities on your characters, and maybe you get some extra movement, which you can use to move into position on your first turn, starting to strike Thor from the very first turn, which might work for you, but you also might want to power up, so there is that. Also, the minions constantly come back into play. You're only temporarily taking them out of play. They're constantly swarming you as the game goes, so there's that balance to be mindful of. But you get to take your multiple actions, and then even with those actions, you get to do more. You get to do rondel actions on top of that. So you set yourself up for a strong attack, but then before you know it, you're going to use those to react to the attack to re-roll more dice. And that's a freebie. You don't even have to use an action for that. And so you feel powerful between your abilities and between the way the rondel works. You feel powerful when the game starts. Then the enemies start taking their turns, and because the minions never truly die, they just respawn back at base, and they continue their slow trek towards you or towards the objectives, trying to get in your way. The minions constantly are overwhelming you in the game. You're constantly playing catch up against a bunch of minions that are threatening to destroy you, even while Thor flings them into you, trying to inflict as much damage as possible. And so you feel powerful, but there's a reason you feel powerful. It's because you need every single one of those actions, every single power at your disposal, in order to stay ahead of the enemies while you try to power up more and more, trying to get that occasional hit in on Thor, while being mindful of the fact that he's going to get harder and harder to kill as you go through it. And so there's both a degree of feeling powerful when the game begins. Then you're powering up, which has you feeling cool and powerful. And look at these cool abilities I'm unlock. When you unlock your monster form, you get a whole new set of abilities over here. This Raven's going to be able to swoop around the board, giving you a lot of movement flexibility. So you're going to really feel significantly more able to get in those additional hits on Thor in particular, hitting him from the spots that you didn't manage to get to until now. But even as you're doing all that, the enemies are ramping up alongside you, and that's going to give a nice degree of ramping up towards the finish line as you play this game, which is something that I very much enjoy in games when it feels like everything's escalating, because it just feels like you're powerful, they're powerful, there's a reason you need to feel powerful, and then whether or not you can actually achieve that end game is a whole different conversation. There's a good sense of teamwork at play in the game. In general, you're going to have to work together with the heroes and their abilities. All the heroes come with their unique abilities, and those are going to really be key to being able to get what you need done. So there is a good degree of table communication, or alternatively for playing solo, just working through it all by yourself. But ultimately, I'd say that a big part of what I'm looking forward to more that I haven't gotten to see yet is going to be the way more gets added to the game. Again, I got a few scenarios over here, so I got a little bit of a flavor of that in that sense, but I want to see more as far as the more bosses, more heroes, more combinations of heroes and monsters. There's a lot more that I want to see from the experience that I didn't get to because of the nature of this being a prototype and with limited content. As far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, I'll say that I have to, kind of what I touched upon already, I'll have to see more before I can judge it fully. Having a single boss that I can fight against in this prototype just means I only got to see one general sense. I have no clue how different bosses feel, or if they feel meaningfully different or not. So it's hard to really fully gauge what this game is going to be like, only what the prototype experience I've had and the potential promise of more. But I will say I have no idea. Will bosses feel meaningfully different, or are there going to be small nuanced rules as far as how the sides work when you're facing off against them? I don't see the full structure for bosses to feel meaningfully different, which gives me some degree of will it feel repetitive the more you play it. The heroes and the monster abilities, the heroes and your power-up ability, those feel pretty strong and also pretty different. I want to see more from them, but they do feel pretty strong. So again, it's before I even get to what I don't like, there's just the recognition that this is a prototype that I haven't gotten to see a lot of it, so it's hard to fully gauge. I'll say there's a lot of small stuff that I've actually passed on to the Creative Game Studio team as part of my feedback on this, but lots of small stuff as far as like some rules that aren't necessarily intuitive. I think a great reference of easily forgotten rules would be great. Like even small things like the fact that the minions constantly respawn. Like when you kill a minion, it goes straight back to a spawning point. That's something that's easy to forget. So there's lots of small little edge cases like that aren't necessarily intuitive, but aren't really complicated. They're just not necessarily intuitive, and so it's helpful to have some sort of a cheat sheet reminder. Other small stuff like that, there's a degree of when you power up based on when you kill a minion, you're going to get a certain degree of points, but you only get to the next upgrade. And again, that can be something that's either easy to forget, or alternatively, sometimes it feels a little bit like a waste to get these three, because it's very rare that you actually can get the full benefit of them. So again, there's a few small things, I don't want to go into every little detail, but a few small things that felt very much like prototype issues. As far as more concrete complaints, as opposed to what I don't know will happen, or alternatively small prototype stuff, I'll say that the game does feel a little bit lighter on the decision space. I mean, the game's a lot of fun as far as the general escalation, and it feels like you're having a lot of fun as you take your actions. But I do feel like there's a degree of how many meaningful decisions am I actually making. The rondel mostly is going to come down to attacking and then moving to set yourself up for those attacks. There's a lot of other things. Yes, there's healing. Yes, there's re-rolling. But usually, more often than not, I felt like I was making kind of the predictable choice in the game. That didn't take away from my fun, but it's definitely something to be mindful of, to be aware of, that it feels like the decision space is a little bit on the lighter side. Even small things like how to build your character, how to upgrade your character might have felt more meaningful. Like there's a degree of yes, you pick your character, you pick your upgrade form. Those are going to give you powerful abilities and a nice little combination that could be different game to game. But having a degree of, oh, well, when I play the game, choosing different upgrade paths or things that gave me more of a feeling of actually developing my build as I played, as opposed to having picked my build from the very get-go. I just wish there were some more small ways to make meaningful choices in the game. I think the biggest meaningful choice is usually going to come down to how you engage with the map, because usually your rondel board is fairly predictable. So overall, I enjoy the experience, but it definitely feels like the decision space is a little on the lighter side relative to what I'd want out of it. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, the consistently bad rolls can absolutely destroy you in this game. It doesn't bother me because if the rolls are consistently bad, I will probably tip a die or two. Although the truth is, you have that reroll aspect in play that does give you enough mitigation, although sometimes you do get locked on these retaliation dice that the monsters are going to hit back and you can't reroll those. Similarly, on that luck aspect, a lot of the game does come down to planning how the enemy minions are going to move around the board and swarm you, trying to take into account the number of actions they have, and then plan accordingly. But that means that every once in a while when you reveal an event that moves the enemies, because usually the enemies are going to attack you based on the boss card, but some of the events will have you saying, oh, well, you know, all level 2 enemies take an activation, and that will really mess you up because suddenly you have all these minions swarming you that you didn't do the math on, and those can hit you far worse than any event does, depending how the board is situated. And then lastly, I'll say sometimes the rondel feels a bit too free. Because of the way the actions tend to pan out, usually you're going to be taking 2 attack actions on a turn, sometimes 1, but if you can, you want to get those 2 attack actions in, you need to stay ahead of the enemies. And then usually between that and either moving or rearranging the cubes in the rondel, sometimes it could feel a bit too free. There is some degree of decision space around how you lay things out, which attack actions you do, how you develop your rondel. As you level up, you're going to have a choice of which of these tiles you're going to be placing on the board, giving you different degrees of flexibility from ranged attacks to more options to upgraded strength in some of these. So you will be building your rondel, and the way you build these out and the way you take actions will matter, but it certainly can feel a little bit too free as you play. As far as final thoughts on Battleforge Berserker, as far as final thoughts on Battleforge Berserker, I really enjoyed playing through this one with a lot of caveats around I want to see more, I don't know how it'll play out over multiple things, I don't know how multiple bosses will play out, it does feel a little light on the decision space, so there's certainly some degree of complaints, and some, well, I say the main complaint really is that it feels a little light on the decision space. Past that, it comes down to just wanting to see more and see how that plays out, see what different heroes feel like, see what the, more scenarios. Scenarios already I got to see at least a sampling of, but more heroes and more bosses and more minions would definitely be nice to see to get a better feel for how the game can play differently as you go through it. Initially, as of right now, I'm putting it as a 4 out of 5. I really like how powerful I feel and that nice ramp of the enemies. The fact that I feel overpowered and also unable to keep up, that's a nice feeling that really worked well for me in this game, and I hope they can maintain that with giving me enough reason to dive into it and keep that experience feeling variable as I play through it. So a 4 out of 5 with the asterisk of this compared. When I review prototypes, sometimes I feel like I'm basically reviewing a final game and it just, happens to be a prototype. And other times I feel like I'm reviewing a prototype. This one definitely felt more like I was reviewing a prototype. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, definitely check out a game called Bloodstones from Druid City Games. I don't know exactly when it will be coming, or if at all. I hope it does come one day. But this did give me that vibe as far as the general fun feeling. The feeling of, it's not necessarily about how tactical everything can be, but it is about how much fun you can have. This gave me a lot of similar vibes to that. And then also I'll say this gave me a little bit of vibes of games like Rum and Bones, in the sense that you are often trying to destroy a lot of these minions just so you can build up the power to be able to take on the boss. Like, lots of boss battlers have you facing off against the boss the whole time, or the minions are in the way. In this game, the minions are literally a tool so that you can power up so that you can take on the boss, and I definitely get that feeling when I play games like Rum and Bones. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.